Okay, thank you everyone. So the first question that people have when coming to a class on gamifying reality is, what does it mean to gamify reality? So first we're going to have anyone have an idea of what that would entail? What it means? What would it mean in your idea, gamify reality? Like the word gamify, playing games, like
virtual world.
Virtual world. Okay, that's a good one. All right.
Yeah, but we have like avatars or an holographic.
Okay, we're going to talk about avatars. Very good.
Make it into a game to transform reality.
Great. These are all perfect.
Racking up points.
Racking up points. That's also good. Okay, then we're going to talk about racking up points. All these things are, it's like you almost wrote my class, which is perfect. That's what you want to hear. It's,
competing against others or yourself?
What's that?
Competing against others or only with yourself?
Okay.
Oh,
Good. So, when I was talking with my son last Sunday before I gave the version of this class in Pico on Monday night, so we were talking, and he was relaying how he was creating the process by which he created puzzles for his kids, for his other siblings, and he initially took a piece of cardboard, he took scissors, and he started cutting because he wanted to gift puzzles for his siblings for the holidays, but what was left as the end result of cutting all these pieces was pieces that were flimsy and fuzzy. Now, if anyone knows anything about puzzles, you can't have flimsy and fuzzy pieces, right? They don't stick together, and it's not impressive. You want to give a gift that's impressive. He's 12 years old already. He has this idea that he has to make really nice presents, and so then he used the Swiss Army knife for the next time. He's like, okay, maybe this will work better. He's going to come up with a really nice puzzle. And the same thing happened, is that the end result was pieces that were still flimsy and fuzzy. So he was going to give up. He's like, oh, you know what, this is not working. Maybe I should just figure out something else to give my siblings. And he's like, you know what, let me try one more time. And he decided, he had this idea. Instead of just starting to cut out pieces one by one, he said, let me first make an outline. Let me first decide what the puzzle is going to look like and make a grid. Right? You make vertical and horizontal lines. And not only should I make an outline, but I'm going to cut according to the outline, line by line. So that's what he did. He cut out line by line, piece by piece, using his Swiss Army knife, and lo and behold, thank you, I would like to inform you tonight that he was able to make a successful puzzle with pieces that were strong and smooth, not fuzzy at all, able to hold together. And then from there he went on to explain all the different puzzles that he made for his siblings, big puzzles and small puzzles. So we have, in these past months, I've been discussing a little bit what it means to have what's called a growth mindset. So Carol Dweck, in her book called Mindset, sold about 2 million copies so far. And she's a professor at Stanford. She came up after maybe 35, 40 years of research with this theory of mindsets. You have either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And a growth mindset, I like to use the example that she brings in her book of you have these kids that are being tested. And progressively the tests get more difficult until at a certain point in the test, she relates this one account where you had a kid that exclaimed, finally something challenging, right? He was excited. Finally, there's a test there's a problem that was challenging. And that's kind of like a kind of understanding what it means to have a growth mindset, is to view challenges as something that are exciting, that are motivating. So then a colleague of hers, Andrew Huberman, who's a neurologist also at Stanford, said that in addition to having a growth or challenge mindset, to be excited by challenges, it's also important to get excitement from the effort itself. to find it something enjoyable. So this was last month when I was discussing this, and multiple people said, you know what this is called in Judaism? We call it schar mitzvah. The reward for a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. So on Wednesday night I was discussing this, and it was called the Light of the Infinite Festival. And if we're talking about infinite light, so it talks in chapter 37 of Tanya, the central work of Chabad, Hasidus, that when a person is doing a mitzvah and expending effort to do a mitzvah, it brings the infinite light of God from above down below. So this is already, we're beginning to understand, growth mindset is very good. It's very good to be excited and motivated by things that are challenging. But it's even better to open that up entirely and say, every effort that I do to connect with God and to reveal the infinite light of God, it's through every act that we do, and that's something very fun and exciting. So we go from a growth mindset to a challenge, and we're starting to understand a bit what it means to have a gaming mindset. We're revealing the infinite light of God, and that's something very exciting. This is like you're in the third installment of the Hasidic Book of the Month Club. So, just going to open the door for the next guest.
Hey! Wow!
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. We started, so just
Great.
please come and take a seat. So we started talking about the growth mindset and the gaming mindset. So the book that we're going to be discussing this month is called Super Better, and this book is by Jane McConigal. She got her PhD. She said she was the first person to get her PhD in gaming. That's a pretty sweet deal, right? To get a PhD in gaming. But it was in psychology, and it was discussing how gaming helps people become more able to persevere through challenges and obstacles. It's still good. And to just overcome life challenges, right? But in this class, we're not here just to overcome life challenges. We're here to transform it and to turn it upside down into something that's positive. So in 2009, so she started off with this book. This is what I originally knew her for years ago. Reality is Broken. This is a pretty cool book, right? About all the different ways to use games in terms of productivity. She spoke to Fortune 500 companies, and she's got a pretty good name for herself. But then in 2009, she had a concussion. And not only did she have a concussion, she had post-concussion syndrome. And she later found out that all the depressing and suicidal thoughts and things that she was feeling was as a result of this syndrome. So she's like, well, I learned about gaming for years and years. This is my life, my profession. But I have to put it to action, right? And that's something very, very helpful and good as someone who is an academic. Usually think of academics in an ivory tower. Someone who actually wants to apply what they're learning. That's pretty. That means that someone has a sense for that it should not only benefit themselves but ultimately benefit other people. So she developed a whole gaming system, which later she called Super Better. And to date, over 1 million people have played the Super Better game. So this is something that she developed as a result of what she felt that she needed for herself in order to overcome post-concussion syndrome. So what did she do? So you have all the game dynamics, right? So she recruited allies. She brought her sister. She brought her husband as part of her to help her on her quest, her mission, and she had to avoid the bad guys. What were the bad guys? Well, for her, it was a lot of things. It was light and noise and crowds. All these things were bothering her as a result of her syndrome. And she started transforming it, and viewing it as part of being on a quest, being on this journey. And every level is a level unlocked, like, for instance, like a power-up. What would be a power-up? Like in every game you have to level up. So eating walnuts. Eating walnuts is good for your mind, apparently. So to eat 10 walnuts, that would be something that would be increase her self-efficacy, be self-affirming. To eat 10 walnuts and say, hey, I just ate 10 more months. I'm doing a good job. I'm on the way to achieve my goal of this game, which is to recover, right? And this is what she developed, and so far 1 million people have played it, and this is something that was really helpful to her. And in talking to my kids, my kids see reality in this way, and probably all kids, this is like the natural state of understanding the world. I got this rocker, and I didn't spend much money, but I really liked it. It's nice rattan, really beautifully made, probably from the 70s. And right away, my kids started rocking and developing a game based on the levels of how to rock the rocker. Like level 1, level 2. I'm like, that's great, but I want to try to keep the rocker intact and not have it fall apart. And so I asked the puzzle son. I have 2 sons. I asked the younger, the puzzle son. I asked him, do you game everything? He's like, yeah. This is like everything. This is just how we do it. And he also develops games all the time. He's always making games. For his birthday, I got him stacks of blank cards to make his war games. And so that's him. So my older son, let's go to him. So last month I was talking about Chutes and Ladders, and we had, in Vermont, we had been talking about Chutes and Ladders. And at the same time as I was talking about it in my class, I was discussing a couple different ideas. He wrote a paper for Humanities, a satirical paper about how very, very terrible Chutes and Ladders is. And how it's like the worst game imaginable. And again, for younger kids, it's like, if you spin, you spin and you move the pieces ahead, the younger kids are okay with that. But he's 14 already. And so I asked him, I have Chutes and Ladders here for anyone that would like a visual example.
I would like to describe that.
So we have your Chutes and Ladders, And he was saying, the moment you think you're going ahead and you go down a chute, and, it's just like there's no strategy involved. It's all just spinning. And he had a whole litany of complaints about the game. And so I asked him, what is the biggest problem with the game? And he said it's because it's not engaging. It's not immersive. We talked about virtual reality, right? It doesn't bring you in, right? And so let me just get a slide here. So I need to set some technical. Okay, I'm not sure where it is, but so there's a game, a virtual game that they made. This was by University of Washington researchers, and the game is called Snow World. And talking about creating a virtual immersive reality. So they developed a game, but it wasn't just for players to play a game. Why did they develop the game? When burn patients undergo the most painful part of the treatment, which is the cleaning and redressing of the wounds, so they wanted to have some way of distracting them. And what they did was they created this virtual game. You put on a headset and you have a joystick, and the players go through snowmen and they throw snowballs, and they go through this game. And they found that the pain was decreased on average of 30 to 50% during the treatment of just the players playing the game. And in the most severe patients, playing the game was more effective than morphine. So they still gave them morphine, but playing the game, playing the Snow World game, this immersive cold, you can imagine that, it's probably like, you think of it as something cold for a burn victim, so it's very healthy. And it was more effective than morphine for the most severe burn patients during this treatment of cleaning and redressing the wounds. And in total, 92% of these patients were able to focus on the game instead of their treatment. 92%, that's almost everyone. Yes?
So Sasha might remember this. You were probably a little girl. You remember when I was burned?
I do remember that.
Yeah, so I had 30-degree burns on my left forearm and on my legs. My pants were totally engulfed in flames
Oh, wow.
and fire. And so I've been through that personally. And I found, like, when they had to take the medical staples out, I found that singing Nigunim did the same thing for me.
Really?
I was focused on Nigunim,
Wow.
and I mean, I could tell it at more length, but I don't want to take too much time here. Anyone who wants to know more details, I can afterwards.
Sure, maybe at the end.
But that really did the trick.
Yeah, that would be great. My uncle also he was a chef, and he was burned pretty severely, and he had to stop being a professional chef as a result, for the most part, because of that. And so after, I'd be very interested to hear. So what this is called the spotlight of attention, right? Think of a computer that our mind only has so much that we can process at a certain time. So either we're focused on the cleaning and the redressing of our wounds, or we're focused on Snow World or something else, like really anything else that we find to be immersive. And so we're going to talk about it in what that means in terms of the Torah context. But it's called the spotlight of attention. Okay, so we're starting to understand a little bit about the kids today. You know, the subtitle for this is the fun and excitement of Judaism, right? Kids today are seeking for immersive experiences and things that are engaging and immersive. Okay, so last month I knew that I was going to give a class on gaming, right? So I'm like, what are the rules? Like, there's no rule book, or maybe there is a rule book. So let me just start playing, right? And so I'm in New Jersey. Some of my work is in New Jersey. So when I check in at night, it's usually very late, and I usually see the same receptionist at night. And we get to talking. He likes Kabbalah, so we have nice conversations. And he said, you know what you are? You know, I told him I'm traveling all the time. He said, you know what you are? You're on tour. 10 to 15 years ago, he was in a band, and he was touring out throughout Europe. And so he knows what it's like to be on tour, have a life on tour. And when he said that, I'm like, you know, instead of viewing this as like something arduous, something, wow, it's a lot of miles, you know, it's fun. It's like, to be on tour is like pretty exciting, right? And I started giving classes in the different cities that I'm in, and just trying to flip it and to view it in a positive way. And that, and all the people that reminded me of, like, oh, it must be so fun to travel. Like, really? like it must be so fun, right? Until I say yes, right? That's the answer that they want to hear. They don't want to hear, like, well, they want to hear, it must be so fun. Oh, you're getting so many miles, right? That's the way to game travel. It's like, oh, you're racking up so many miles. And so, you know, when you start like viewing it in that way, and I'm like, oh, this is a perfect example of gaming. And there's just so many examples. So one of the my favorite games that I play with my kids is Ticket to Ride. Anyone play Ticket to Ride?
No, but I've seen it.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun game.
I know the song.
Yeah, it probably named it after that song. So in the game, typically speaking, you get more points the farther the travel. It's like New York to Los Angeles is like 22 points, which is a lot of points in the game. So if you start like miles, right? You know, it's like you're racking up miles. I can Ticket to Ride. It's like, wow, you traveled a long distance, but you got all those points, right? So, so when I was giving the class in Pico, and this is the fun part of the interactive element and seeing gamifying reality, is that it's everywhere, including, of course, the interaction with the class. So a person in the class brought up Mary Poppins, and I you know, maybe it was before my time, I guess, but she brought it up.
It's probably by this time, but people who are secular, they know about it more.
Yeah, so let me read the portion that I thought was really cool. In every job that must be done, there is an element of fun.
Yes.
You find the fun and snap. The job's a game. And then I skipped to this portion. A robin feathering his nest has very little time to rest. While gathering his bits of twine and twig, though quite intent in his pursuit, he has a merry tune to toot. He knows a song will move the job along. So that's
Speaking about music.
speaking about music. So actually, I first was interested in exploring gaming from this holy context in 1998. This was actually my first question that I asked Rabbi Ginsburg. So I'm a student of Rabbi Ginsburg. He's a Chabad Chassid and Kabbalist living in Israel. And I had a lot of like off-the-wall questions, and I was searching for some rabbi that would have the answers. And so one of my questions was about creating a kosher game. And so he said, and later on I asked him, he said, because he personally likes this, he suggested creating a game around Parak Shira. Parak Shira was composed by King David, and it's about ultimately how all of creation sings the praises of God. And so I'm still hoping to develop that further, but that's in terms of seeing the joy and the happiness in all of reality. So a singing bird is a very, very good metaphor for that. So that was really cool that this person brought up Mary Poppins.
Wasn't Picture originally about the birds?
Well, one of the songs is about a bird. There's various songs of different things in creation.
The bird and the frog and everything in creation, what they would say.
Right.
On how
Right. The verse and songs they would sing is their praise to God. So I just thought that was pretty cool.
Can I say something about, you were talking about travel?
At the end, we'll have interactive. Okay, so we talked about the spotlight of attention. We talked about Snow World. And so what is our ideal spotlight of attention? This was already alluded to, but we're going to open this up some more. So for some months, as a bedtime story, I would read this book called Akiva by Marcus Lehman. Anyone have read that by Feldheim? Yeah. So it's a very exciting rendition of the life story of Akiva based on mainly Talmudic sources, and he spins his story around it to make it engaging, especially for younger people, that they should be able to kind of like view it as something exciting. And so I would read this to my sons, both we'll call him the puzzle son and the chutes and ladder son, or the chutes and ladder hater son. And so I realized, the reason I was reading it to them is because it's important to read about the life of tzaddikim, about righteous men and women, Jewish men and women, and but ultimately it's a book, right? You want to see this in all of reality. You want to open it up, and how do you expand that, scale that into to seeing the world like that? So I was thinking and trying to understand this, and then I realized, just turn back to Rabbi Akiva. So we have there's an immersive experience, immersive like virtual reality or real reality world that he entered called the Pardes, which is the mystical. Literally, it's called the mystic orchard. It's the exploring the mysteries of creation. And there he went together with 3 other sages. And it says of only Rabbi Akiva that he was able to enter in peace and come out in peace. Right? Enter unscathed and come out unscathed. Whereas the other 3 rabbis, one died, one became crazy, and one became a heretic. So only Rabbi Akiva, it says he was able to enter in peace and come out in peace. And it says in Kabbalah that that's called having a healthy run and return. Okay, that's just that's how it's explained. And he before they entered, and basically entering is have like this meditative state, enter this meditative state. Before he entered and kind of meditated on these Kabbalistic intentions, he tried to warn the other sages. And what did he try to warn them? So he said that when you come to a place of pure marble stone, do not say water, water. For it is said, he who speaks lies shall not stand before my eyes. So the Arizal explains that this is the place of the unification of Torah and science, of the paradox of all paradoxes, of, you have the physical world and then you have spirituality. And don't try to make sense of it. Don't try to come up with your own ideas. Just accept it and move on. But more than that, what he did was he didn't try to attack the evil head on. And what evil were they trying to all rectify? They were trying to all rectify the sin of Adam, the original sin, right? And if they were successful in that, they would be able to bring Mashiach, right? No more suffering, no more pain, just peace in the world. But the other 3 sages, what they did was they tried to attack evil head on. But Rabbi Akiva, he said, you got to focus on the positive. Focus on just the positive. Focus on the goodness in the world and the positive in the world. And that, like we say, a little light dispels a lot of darkness. So that was Rabbi Akiva's approach. And although he wasn't successful, in fully rectifying and bringing about Mashiach, still he was able to leave unscathed. And from there we can learn an important lesson for us in our generation. So part of playing the game, where we talked about Jane McConical, that you have to recruit allies, you have to, you have power-ups, you have different dynamics of a game, but you also have to have a secret identity, right? As you're going on a quest. And what was her secret identity? Her secret identity was Jane the Concussion Slayer, right? So we said that's kind of like attacking evil head on, right? So what would we say? Is we would turn it around and we say, Jane, the really smart, really healthy of mind one, that this weakness that you have can be turned into a strength. That you can become even a better thinker and more strong-minded moving forward, right? So it's like turning it around, like playing a game with it, and not attacking the evil, but just flipping that experience. So about the importance of emphasizing the good, but more than that, it's becoming the hero of our own story, of taking the place as the hero of our own story. It says that in the future, this is from Rabbi David of Lalov. He said that right now we learn the tractate of Bava Kama, like one of the tractates of the Talmud. In the future, we're going to learn the tractate of Rabbi David of Lalov. That meaning what? That a tzaddik is someone who's all of us have this ability. We're called a whole nation of tzaddikim. We all have this ability to be the heroes of our own story and to take the place of being that champion over these challenges and obstacles that we have, and to turn it around into something positive. So in the future, we're going to learn the tractate of Reb David of Lalov, right? It's like my autobiography. It's going to be part of the Torah. Just today in shul, in synagogue, so the rabbi, there was a bar mitzvah, and he was together with the bar mitzvah boy at Chabad, and he said, may you grow up to be a chayil. A chayil is a soldier, right? And a chayil, he said, turns the enemy, the adversary, into a friend. Right? We're talking about transforming, of turning it around. We have a friend of mine who passed away, Yehuda Dukes. He said this a few months before he passed away. He said that a winner makes it even that the adversary is part of his win. And he said that what seems to be negative in the trials that he had in life is part of his winning. And another person, Yitzi Hurwitz. Anyone know about the Rabbi Yitzi Hurwitz? He's in the city. So he said, his wife said that it's like we got a promotion. He has ALS, and may Hashem heal him. But it's like we got a promotion because you had thousands of people that previously that are going to listen to our message now because of all that we went through. So actually, I have a personal story about that. So when I was going through my life difficulties, and the only Torah for months that I was able to learn was his Torah, his weekly Torah portion, because he was literally writing it with his eyes, with the computer. And I'm not sure if he's able to do it now because it's very tiring. Yeah. But in those years, he was doing it weekly. And so for my 40th birthday, 3 years ago, I went to the resting place of the Barucher Rebbe on my birthday, the 8th of Elul. And I went with my parents. And it was a really big turning point in my life. I was starting my life over again post-divorce. And there was Yitzi Hurwitz. Now, how did he get to the Ohel, right? So he's in a wheelchair, and he has a nurse. And so it was a whole big story. It was in the New York Post, and it was really made the headlines, is that he wanted to be there, to be in New York for his youngest son's bar mitzvah. That when his youngest son was 7, that's when he was diagnosed. So a lot of his son's life up until that time, was consumed by by his situation. So they really worked it out with paramedics and all the arrangements that he should be able to go to the East Coast, and not only that, to go to the Rebbe. And you can, just very emotional. And that day that he was there was the 8th of Elul. That was my 40th birthday. That's when I was there, and so I got to thank him in person, and it was just a very, very meaningful, special moment for me. And when you realize that, at the time when you're going through things, it's like, oh, this is terrible, and I'm not going to like sugarcoat it. Like when I was going through everything, it was like really, really hard. But then afterwards, it's like, you're just grateful for been able to get out to the other side, and just, hindsight is 20/20. But it's to be able to see maybe ultimately the good in some of it, maybe not all of it, but the good, ultimately to see the good in it. And so Rabbi Akiva, his teacher was Nachum Ish Kamzu, the man who would always say, Gamifying that this too is for the good. So this ability to see the good, even if we, there's a lot of terrible things and hard things, and it doesn't mean that we see it right away. But over time, hopefully, we'll just at least have gratitude. All that day that I was able to think about was that I was just thankful to God for taking me through that difficult period, and for taking me to that moment. And better yet, I was able to thank one of the people that was really helpful to me in that journey. So we talked about snow. We'll just do a numerical value, just to lighten things up a little bit. So near Hanukkah, we have Hanukkah coming up. So Hanukkah candle, the value of near Hanukkah equals sheleg, equals snow. So we talked about entering sheleg.
333.
Yeah. So you very quick. So it's when we talk about entering an immersive experience, it's also that we know that even if we go into a place that's seemingly cold, it's ultimately we have that light inside. We can be a lamplighter. We can shine that light to others, and ultimately come out of it and to inspire and to turn that outward. And this year, one of the things to focus on, this is called Shnas Hakel, the year of gathering. Right? This is the year after the sabbatical year is called everyone would gather together. This was on the second day of Sukkot, and they would come and hear the Torah. And the Baruch Rebbe said that we should try to have as many gatherings. So we're doing that now. We're gathering, and not only that, but there's the qualitative and the quantitative. Right? You have the quantitative, you have people coming together, but also that there's seeing the unity in everything. Seeing the commonality where we're all sharing this experience of being in a class together. And all coming out of it with different things, but it's about seeing the unity in all of creation. And really, we're talking about gaming creation. Well, it's the idea of really bring things together. And the more that we're kind of outward focused, Rabbi Akiva, he wanted to make it easier for us, right? He wanted to make the world to better the world, and to have that in mind, that every effort that we spend is both bringing people together and making the world more of like an appreciation of the oneness of God. So you have a lot of schools. They game Hakel. How do they game Hakel? How many gatherings can you do? How many Hakel gatherings can you do? So that's good. You have prizes, you have raffles, and now we're talking about internally to really come out with a greater appreciation. And the more, last month I'm playing this game. I'm gaming reality, and the more that I'm like, okay, you got to have things, you got to have examples and things that are going to be helpful to people. And the more that I was saying that I'm playing the game, the more the examples came out, right? And that's all that's needed is to just be present and to say, I'm showing up and I'm doing this. Right, talk about motivation, right, and this is to have this fun, to see the fun and excitement in everything that we're doing. there was a, talk about an example that's brought in Super Better about using gaming, an immersive way of looking at things. And we can bring this to Torah education also. So this father and daughter were having this dialogue. She was being bullied in school, and she was dreading going to school that day. And so she said, Dad, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put my armor on. And they both play Minecraft together. So this was like a Minecraft terminology. And so he suggested putting on her diamond armor, which is like the best kind of armor that protects you against everything. I haven't played the game, so my kids used to play the game. And that's the idea of you have to have this secret language. You have this dialogue. Kids love exploring and seeing things in an immersive way. So this is just we talked about. So we talked about David Lelov and being the hero of our own story and immersing in our true selves, and so that's also kind of what it means that to take on your avatar, right? So an avatar, for instance, sometimes I'm always a tati, I'm always a husband, I'm always a student, a speaker, an editor. But at certain times, you're needed for certain things, right? So, like I'm going to Vermont, and I have to be fully a tati, right? I have to embrace that and immerse in that fully, that reality. And so we have these quests and these missions that we take on, and just part of our lives, and just to be there for others. And we have to be fully present and fully accept those roles that we're put into it at any given time. So I actually didn't think of the two Shabbases ago, I was in La Brea, and two people were talking about acting and giving like a course one-on-one, a 101 of what it means to act. So the first thing that he said is there's a dynamic between the people, between the two actors, and you have the chemistry and energy. He also said it has to be like you're the one saying the lines, right? You can't just parrot the lines. You can't just read the lines. You have to, what they do is they get you to say the lines over and over and over again, and Mark will know better, until it's like you're believable as the person that you're playing, right? And so I thought about that. I'm like, that's really, you have to immerse in your role. That's all of what we're talking about, Rabbi Akiva, being other focused. You have to immerse in your role of being in the place to be able to help others. Because if you're faking it, you're not making it, right? If you're not there fully for others, then people are going to notice. What's the expression that we say in Chabad is that if words that come from the heart go into the heart, right? It has to be that you're fully into it and you're fully there for other people, and you really are there for them. So then on Monday night, I was in Pico, and there the topic of how this relates to improvisation came about. And there, this lady there mentioned the yes and game of improv, is that you're just having this dialogue, and you're just like very spontaneous, this interaction between two people. And what Mark had mentioned is that really the point of the yes and game is that you're doing it for the sake of, you're trying to make the other person look good, right? And so my wife was listening to a podcast before Shabbos and about gamifying marriage from a therapist and someone who has 20 years of improv experience. Talk about how everything comes together, right? Everything's interconnected. And so that's kind of in marriage, right? You have to be other focused. You have to make the other person look good, right? And so the more that, but it can't be rehearsed. It has to be spontaneous, and it has to be really really coming out from your true essence. So there's Monday night. There's another. You think about a difficult situation. we have Hanukkah coming up, which is like darkness to light. You have Purim, which is talk about flipping. The typical example of flipping is the story of Purim, and that's in Kabbalah. It's called bitterness to sweetness, to flip the emotions from something that's bitter to something that's sweet. So another very difficult story in the Jewish calendar is the imprisonment of the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. And we have the celebration of his release on Yud-Tes Kislev on Monday night. And how do you game Yud-Tes Kislev? How do you game something where he was thrown into prison, he had this capital offense, God forbid, for spreading Torah? And so again, you have to kind of laugh at the people that were imprisoning him. They kind of not view it as something serious, because ultimately God is in charge. God is in control. So what did the authorities try to do? Is they tried to squeeze him. They thought he had dangerous information, right? Dangerous information, right? So they tried to squeeze him, but what came out was the secrets, the most hidden treasures of his soul. It's called the kasis l'ma'or, to be crushed, to illuminate, to ultimately that like an olive, right? When a person goes through difficulties, then the pure olive oil, the pure light comes out. We have olive oil coming up, right, with Hanukkah. So it's not making light of what happened, of the imprisonment, and it was very difficult and very hard. But it was for the sake of the joy to follow, and it's like the most joyous celebration, right? Yud-Tes Kislev, the 19th of Kislev. So we all have a personal challenges and struggles that we've gone through. And just to really not only see the light at the end of the tunnel, but to go from Jane the concussion slayer to Jane the mind champion, to go from whatever our weaknesses are, become our strengths. That's our superhero power. That's the thing that we can turn around. And so that's in a nutshell. That's in a nutshell what the topic was tonight. And hopefully next month we'll talk about what it means to flood the world with the knowledge of God, what that looks like in our generation. It has to do to some extent with crowdsourcing of everyone gathering together with their own knowledge and joining together for common purposes. And so that'll be God willing next month. And I'll just tell you one more story. So this is my younger son, my puzzle son, Yaakov. So when we were in Israel, and talk about difficult situations. So he was actually bitten by a scorpion. Yeah, like a big, like the worst kind of scorpion, I think. And so I think we think at the time that maybe, I don't know if this is I didn't see it myself, but other people said they saw my other members of my family. They said that they thought he was getting in the way of my baby at the time, so they should bite him instead of her. I don't know if that's true or not, but I like to think so because he's a very sweet kid. So for a long time we called him Yaakov HaGibor, right? Yaakov the hero. And thankfully there was we lived in Bat Ayin at the time, and there was someone that had this salve that distracts the venom, and thankfully he was able to get that in time. And so that's what we called him. We called him, that was his secret identity, which became his hero identity, Yaakov HaGibor. And so we all have that hero potential within, and he loved it. It made him feel so good that he was able, and it's true. It was all true. He was survived, and what we call someone who survives Yanamata, the dreaded disease, a survivor, not only a survivor but a champion. So this, hopefully we should all be healthy and be able to turn any difficulties in our life to something ultimately positive, and anything that was initially weakness and something bitter into something sweet and light-filled. Yes?
You were talking about the man. On Monday night, there's a propaganda out in Westlake in honor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all over.
Hollywood. 6:30 with dinner.
Can I say something about traveling?
Yeah.
Okay, when you're in one city and you have a share at your house, that's cool. When you go to a city in a different state, now you can call yourself interstate. Once you fly outside the country, you have to go on the airplane. Now you're global. You have a global situation.
Yeah.
So those are also
Yeah, I mean, what in the resume, if you're a speaker, you want to say international speaker, right? So the farther it is, the better it sounds for people, right? International. Wow, that's.
Maybe I should be overseas somewhere. Or maybe just Mexico.
You want to share your story?
I also wanted to say one other thing is crushed for light.
Yeah.
There's two kinds when there's two kinds of crushing. There's oil that's squeezed. An olive that's squeezed a bit releases a drop of oil which is suitable for lighting. An oil which is crushed a lot makes a different kind of oil which is good for different carbonates. And it's interesting. I like to point out that when it says crushes la moer, that's the whole thing is talking about when you crush a bit. Not when you totally when you crush a bit.
That's a good one.
Okay.
We don't want to be totally.
We don't want to be totally crushed.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned just the gematria regarding Ner Hanukkah and Sheleg snow. What is there a specific correlation or something like that?
Yes.
I feel like maybe I missed something.
Yeah, sure. So this was from an article from Rabbi Ginsburg. So the Hanukkah candles we light in public, and which can be seen after the sun sets, are meant to illuminate and warm the darkness and cold of the long nights of the month of Tevis. Indeed, the Hanukkah candle near Hanukkah equals snow, shalig, and it draws down the manifestation of the 13 attributes of mercy. So it's transforming darkness into light.
Thank you.
I think you're just trying to connect with the snow world, but also.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, the Hanukkah's in the winter. That's the time of snow.
Well, at least in the northern hemisphere.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, people in Australia.
Or Chile.
Or Chile, sorry.
Oh, I could have. We're in California. I should have started off explaining what snow is.
We're northern hemisphere normative.
Would you like to share your story about the Nigunim and how I was able?
Okay, sure. So I had two sets of medical staples that were holding. See, this is a skin graft on my arm. I've got the same kind of thing on my legs. And they took skin from the rest of my legs and from my stomach to put on the burn sites. So I had 75 staples, and these are not like the little kinds that you use to staple papers together. These are like big, thick staples, but they're not crimped. They're just kind
Square,
of, yeah, kind of square. And so I had 75 of those in my, let's see, was it the donor site? There's donor sites, and then there's burn sites. And I forget now which was which. But anyway, I had 75 in one set, and then 100 in the other. So they gave me morphine to remove the 75 staples, and I was using sort of a martial arts type breathing to try to focus out of the pain, and it definitely helped, but there were probably a dozen of those staples coming out that really hurt, and there were maybe 3 of them that were just showstoppers that, like one more and then I was going to completely lose it. So that was with morphine.
Why don't they put you to sleep?
What?
Why don't they put you to sleep completely?
I mean, there's always some risk, I guess, of
The anesthesia.
So. But probably the answer is because it led to the second session, which was a couple of days later when they took out 100 staples.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, I don't know where the inspiration came from, but I got the idea to start singing Nigunim. And and the morphine was nauseating. I hated it. It made my stomach just sick. Couldn't stand it. So before they were about to start, I said, give me a minute or two, and I just need to get myself, I'm going to be singing tunes and closing my eyes, and I just don't, tune out to everything that goes on, then start. And this was 100 staples. And singing the Nigunim, I maybe felt like a little, and this was with no morphine. I felt maybe two of them, I felt like a little prick sensation. That was it. That was 150. Although I could have strangled the nurse because she said, "Oh, you're all done." And, great, I'm done. I come out of it. Yeah, now there's just only this other little set left.
Oh. That's not done.
I said, oh wow, that's a lot.
You could go back in state.
Give me another 2 minutes, if you would. Went back into it.
Wow.
How long?
However, there are some limits to that. So I had on the burn sites, they put something called BioGreen, which looks like sushi nori, like that green stuff that they wrap sushi with, and they had that in it, but my burn sites became infected, and so after it had already kind of integrated with the skin underneath, they had to rip it off.
Oh.
And that the Nigunim were not enough. So there I said, okay, I'll take the morphine also. So there's limits, but within limits, it did a lot.
Wow.
Jacob, how long ago was this?
This was 1994.
Wow.
It was.
How have I never heard this story from you before?
Oh,
You never heard it?
yeah. I was doused with burning oil that was flames a foot high, and my pants were engulfed in flames. I had to drop and roll to the floor, and it was for the next 6.5 hours. It felt like the fire was still going on inside my arm, even though they gave me morphine after about an hour and a half of. I guess it took them some time to get me to the hospital, but most of it was just the insurance crap and the admin and triage and whatever. So, but that after they gave me morphine, which was an hour and a half into it, it still felt like a fire was going on inside my arm, and that continued for another 5 hours before it finally stopped. So that was the worst pain I ever had in my life, and I have it on the word of a woman who's been through that it's way worse than childbirth. Because childbirth, the contractions, you're on and you're off, but this is just it's continuously on. So it was. Yeah, and then right.
Can you sing that song now?
Well, I could.
Because we need relief from the pain. No, because of the story, this pain.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there's an old Jewish saying: "It's better to say I was sick than I was wealthy."
So what's the positive that came out of it?
Well, for one thing, I survived something that was potentially life.
Isn't it harder sometimes to say, okay, so what am I grateful for at that point? Like, so I went through this horrible experience, but what is, how do I say thank you?
Yeah. It's, okay. I'll answer you, there's more than one answer to that question, but here's a fairly simple one. In the year 2019, Hashem pulled the plug out from my business, and it just flatlined for about 7 months. I had to let go my vice president who had been with me for 22 years. I had no money to pay him. I was getting hounded by creditors, calls all the time. I had to move my business out of the office building in which I'd been for 18, 19 years, move it home. So all this turned out to be a bracha in disguise, because now my business was home, and then Hashem restored my business back to me in January 2020, right before the beginning of COVID. So had I been in that office building, I would have I would have been paying $1,500 a month for an office that I couldn't even go to, and I wouldn't have an efficient setup with because the main computers were in the office. I did have a virtual pipeline link, but it's not as good. So anyway, Hashem, he gave me a bracha disguised as a claw. I finished the year at $106,000 in debt, and I had no idea how I could pay that back. It looked like it was insurmountable. It was just overwhelming. Like the end of December 2019, I thought I was out of business. There was no business left. I'd already let go, and creditors calling. It was just horrendous. January, all of a sudden, I got a phone call, and business started coming in, and it ended up being a great year for me. And it's funny, I remember telling people, which year was that? 57, 78. I mean, I figured out the multiplicative factors of 57, 78, and it was something like 17 squared, which is 289. Yeah, times 10, and then doubled again. So 17 is the gematria of Tov, so it was Tov squared times 10, which is 10 sphera, and then doubled again. I told people before the year started, this is going to be an amazing year. It'll be fantastic. I had no idea it was going to be COVID, but it ended up being an amazing, fantastic year for me. At the end of 2020, I was debt free.
Wow.
So I look at that burn to answer your question. That got me out of a lot of spiritual debt from my younger years. So that's the point. So it's a long answer to your question, and it's not the only answer that I can give you.
Yeah.
But I remember the night that I paid off the last of the debt. I called both of my sons. We fabrang together on a Zoom meeting. I was like almost out of my mind with joy that I was out of debt.
Wow.
So.
Do you remember one of the Nigunim you sang during the treatments?
Oh yeah. The main one that I sang was Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim, that one. A.D. Rottenberg. So that was the main, and I went into some other ones too, but I'd say that was 90%.
Okay.
Did that experience spiritually? Did you have a growth spiritually with that burn experience?
That's a good question. I mean, I've come to understand why it was the 20 to 60-year-olds who had the din of Mavet, from the Egel and Zahav. There's something about age, of just having weathered a bunch of crises, that at some point I just know that everything's going to work out. So I tend not to get flustered and panicked. I saw everybody freaked out from COVID. I'm unvaccinated. I did a lot of research on it. I was able to stay very calm and I think give hadracha to my family, at least one of whom listened to me. So I think the answer is probably yes, but it's kind of hard to measure. But I say, yeah, just being a veteran survivor. Yeah. I mean, I also lost my wife 26 years ago. I mean, I've been through a lot. I had 9 and 6-year-old sons. Sasha used to ride in carpool with my boys, and I used to take her to school.
You can take art classes with your wife.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, there's just something about surviving. You get knocked down, and there's a difference between being beaten up and being beaten down. One thing to be beat up, and you come back. I remember Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs said I remember seeing one of his Divrei Torah. That's the way the doctors were. One of the criteria for how healthy your heart is how quickly it recovers from being stressed when they put him on the treadmill. And that's, he said, what the Jewish people has done. Hashem just gives us all these, some of them horrendous challenges. Holocaust is the biggest one in a long time. And we just keep coming back. Judaism was almost wiped out, and look what the Rebbe did. Like, yeshivas all over the world, and we're still in the game. We're in the game. There's a lot to be said for being in the game.
Yeah. So, thank you very much. That was really quite amazing. I didn't know that story going into it, and quite remarkable that it related to the topic exactly. And through my difficulty, I affectionately call it the year of hell. Living separated inside the house before I left, moved on to create a separate household and started visiting with my kids from a separate apartment. It was excruciating in my own way, and we all have our own challenges. And there was times where it was like, how am I going to rebuild and get through it? But that day at the Ohel that was my turning point, where when I wrote the letter to the Rebbe, all I had was gratitude to God for getting me through to that point. And at the same time, it's like I was talking with Mark about, some people have a fear of public speaking, and I probably did in the past, but after you go through something like that, public speaking is like down very, very far down on the list. After having gone through all these other things, it's like getting up in front of a group of wonderful people is not a big deal. So, but thank you so much again for coming. So I have, I mentioned Carol Dweck's book on mindset, on fixed and growth mindsets. So we actually worked together on a book with Rabbi Ginsburg on that book called Frames of Mind. And there we talk about the Kabbalah of having what it means to have a fixed and growth mindset. And in order to write this book, the joke is that it took a lot of motivation to write a book about motivation. I had to move to Israel with my family at the time, and every time I wanted to stop, and I said to Rabbi Ginsburg, a booklet is good enough, right? No, keep on going, Anton, keep on going. And it started off just from a 10 pages of a transcript of a class, and now it's 250 pages, thank God. So there's copies of this available. I also, during COVID, I wanted to do something. My daughter is named chedva after a breathing meditation by Rabbi Ginsburg, the chedva breathing meditation, which also is basically about having joy with every breath that we take. And so I wanted to do something for my daughter, and so this is a booklet called The Joy of Breathing that I did also together with Rabbi Ginsburg. And so that's also, I have some copies here available. So this is 20, this is 10, and together is 25.
Oh.
So that's also available. And anyone that, if I do not have your number, please leave your number.
Can we do a Venmo?
Yeah, my wife has Venmo. So that's good. And part of this is to apply it, right? We're like, how do we apply this to education? And I have different ideas of what it would mean to do a scavenger hunt, what different types of activities, of how to apply these principles of seeing the interconnectedness and godliness and everything into life experience, into both for elementary school and for adolescents, and then all of us. So anyone that's interested in anyone in education or anyone that's interested in work, I'm happy to continue the dialogue. But a class, is like introductory, to present the overview of the topics, and then anyone who's interested I'm happy to talk to you after. But thank you all for joining. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you have the dates for your next?
Not yet, but I'm back. I'm back every month. So I go and I visit with my kids for about a week and a half, and then I come right back to my wife. So that's I'll be back, and my flight hopefully will be like December 28th, and then I think January 1st I'm giving a class. It's my dad's first year at site. So Sunday night, January 1st, I'm hoping to have a class for anyone who would like to come. That's for my dad. But then the topic about flooding the world with the knowledge of God, that will be in the subsequent days following January 1st.
Is it the small book is the joy of
Breathing, right?
And both of them together is the joy of the garden.
Very good, Salmi. You're always good with the ideas.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's, the words for breathing are all connected with the words for soul in Hebrew. You don't see that in English, but ruach.
So actually,
and the shama, the shema.
Right. So that's actually discussed in the book. It's one of the central teachings of Rabbi Ginsburg. Is that the last verse in Tehillim in Psalms is called Anashama Tahalo Kahaluka. Every soul praises God. So it can be read as Kohanashima. With every breath, you praise God. So, yeah. Okay, I think that's good. And anyone who, have a good week, everyone. And it should be a week filled with gaming, but turning